Down. My name's Derek. I'm the bartender here, but they let me talk sometimes. No, I'm actually the director of the portfolio team at Endeavor, and Endeavor has a mission to build out the ecosystem of Florida. So we're located in Miami, but we are part of the whole Florida ecosystem, and we love all our children equally. So Fort Lauderdale definitely falls under that guise. That being said, first and foremost, I want to thank our hosts at General Provision. So,
Good evening. Hi everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. We're really excited to partner with Endeavor on this event and show some light on Fort Lauderdale. You all know it's not all about Miami. We have talent here too in Fort Lauderdale, so we're very excited for this evening. Thank you to the panel for coming. For those of you that don't know anything about General Provision, we are a work club for founders, makers, and creators. And in addition to this inspiring workspace and another workspace in Fat Village, we offer programming like you're going to be able to see tonight. We also give free day passes, so if anyone wants to come and try out the space, please speak to me or speak to Maris, and we'd be happy to sign you up and you can try us out. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you, Derek.
This woman just had a baby only months ago. Ribbon. Looking good.
all right. So, that being said, let's get into it. So, I'm not going to start off with the typical regurgitation of a lot of stats. I think we all know things are changing in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Boca Raton, throughout the ecosystem. I think you've probably seen one or two new faces around Fort Lauderdale. And I have a secret, which if you came to the y.Miami event that we had, I told the same secret. I am not, unfortunately, from either Miami or, more importantly, here, Fort Lauderdale. Oh, yes. I am from San Francisco.
All right.
Oh, yes.
Make
Cheers.
the big move.
Cheers. Yeah, right. Oh, I didn't get booed this time. That's progress, right? No, but I made the move here, and I made the move for a variety of different reasons that I sat down and assessed and really made a big decision. I drove here, so it was very intentional. I went from one side of the 10 to the other. And I'm extremely happy that I am here. But as a way to cheat, to understand the ecosystem, and more importantly, as a thought piece on what this ecosystem is, what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the things that we're seeing coming into that ecosystem, we put together the whole y.FLORIDA speaker series, where we start talking before we start having potentially issues. There's a lot of things that were in San Francisco and the Valley that were fantastic, but there was a lot that wasn't so great, and hence I moved. And I think there's some people here on this panel that can really shine a light on where we've been, what they like now, what they don't like they're seeing now, and things that they're putting in place as thought leaders that we can look to incorporate into our daily lives. So that being said, I've talked way too much for my point as the moderator. I'm going to pass the mic along and get everyone in the panel to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Ladies.
Thank you. I am Lil Roberts, CEO and founder of Sendu. Sendu is an online bookkeeping and accounting. We're an intelligent automation for online bookkeeping and accounting, tech-enabled SaaS. Born and raised in South Florida and love it. And I consider us to be the greater Miami region, which we'll talk about why people from the outside look at us as that instead of Fort Lauderdale, Miami, West Palm.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. David Coddington, Senior Vice President of Business Development for the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, which is the principal economic development organization that represents all of Broward County. We focus on target industries, that being marine, life sciences, aviation, and surprisingly, information technology. So that little map that you see on your seats, that's something we started about 8 years ago. It's called South Florida Tech Gateway, work in the cloud, live in the sun. So that represents, even though we're responsible for the job growth here in Broward County, we saw the bigger piece of South Florida. And if you're under South Florida, you'll see Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm, because each county's got a unique brand, a unique attraction. And the awesome thing about South Florida as a whole, the way we look at it, is that each area within the county, or excuse me, each area within the region offers something that's unique. Miami's completely different than Fort Lauderdale, and Fort Lauderdale's different than Palm Beach, and so there's something here for everybody. And I think that, as well as just the acceptance, I'll say, well, I'll let it go. What are the other questions? Thank you.
I'm Luis. I'm Brazilian born, Boston raised, and been in Florida for 8 years. I work with Silicon Valley Bank covering the state of Florida. And Silicon Valley Bank is essentially a bank headquartered in Silicon Valley, California. We have historically covered Florida out of Atlanta, flying in, doing deals, building relationships, and flying back out. Last year, we decided to have someone in marketing, so that's my role. I cover primarily seed-funded tech startups, all the way through probably Series D or E when they become more of a corporation. And my team's based in Atlanta. Till this day, I work from home quite a bit, but I'm in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, wherever my clients are, essentially is where I go.
And I'm Ian Aaron. I'm the CEO of Ubiquia. I like to consider myself the poster child for South Florida tech. I actually made a conscious decision to, even though I lived in Palo Alto and in Silicon Valley for 9 years, I made a conscious decision to have the business headquartered here in Fort Lauderdale. Not only do we get to leverage great working capital facilities from Silicon Valley Bank, but strategic investors like NextEra Florida Power and Light, great VCs like Fuel Venture Capital out of Miami. So we've been really fortunate here. We actually make intelligent infrastructure platforms for utilities, mobile operators in cities. I get to wake up every day making cities smarter, safer, and more connected. So it's a very rewarding thing that we do. And one of the drivers for us for moving here was actually the fact that Motorola had 4,500 people based out of Plantation, about 6-7 miles west of here. And we've been really fortunate to hire amazing talent. And that was the key driver for being here. We originated with a pretty dispersed workforce, everything from Canada to Melbourne, Florida to down in this area and California. We decided to centralize everything here, primarily because of the great workforce, living conditions, etc.
Perfect. So we got 4 very successful people in front of us, and 4 very probably or somewhat different timelines. So let's take it back a step. Let's take it back to when you very first started interacting with the Florida or Fort Lauderdale ecosystem, and just let us know what it was like at that time. So what was going on? What were your pros, cons, struggles? How do we get to present day?
Never a con.
Yeah, no cons whatsoever. But if there are any, just let us know just a little bit. So
You want to go first? Okay, I'll go first. So I started with the Alliance back in 2010, and looking at the industries, and the Alliance was going through some changes. And we really tried to focus in on what are the target industries. And so technology obviously was one. So your point, Motorola. I mean, the fact that you had 2 of the biggest tech companies in the world, between Motorola and IBM just across the border in Palm Beach. And you had, between the 2 of them, about 20,000 technologists just in South Florida. Amazing, amazing talent. Things that nobody else created, these people did. And so we were, that Wayne, obviously IBM, tremendously, denumbered or, shrunk their workforce. But the thing was, we still had people. They were like, okay, I'm going to go work for Ubiquia. I'm going to go work for someone else. I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to go start Sunrise Micro Devices, whatever it may be. Unbelievable stories about it. So the 2 things that I heard years ago is that the talent would go, oh, there's no companies here. And then I'm like, well, there's no companies here. What about companies? What Lil has done here. I mean, other companies that start up and they're smaller, and and then as well as some of the other big companies like Citrix and UKG. These are all started here. I'm like, okay, the talent's saying the companies are here, and I start researching, and I'm like, okay, there's 2,000 technology companies in South Florida. This is crazy. And the companies are saying, oh, the talent's not here. Well, yeah, it is. How do we do these things if we don't have the talent? So it was like ships passing in the night. I'm like, well, how do we bring this together? And that was the whole idea behind this map. So I think, to me, one of the things that's really changed from when I started is now you can see that Miami's jumped on board in a big, big way. And Palm Beach is like, okay. And so, and having companies participate on this, and it all started because of that piece. But the way I learned it, or we learned it, was by going out and meeting with all these other tech companies and saying, what is the issues? Why do you think? And so they share that, and we came down to 3 things. One is to be able to attract talent. And how do you do it? You have to be able to get your word out. In order to retain the talent, you have to make sure that they know there's other opportunities. Because if they go, well, if I come to town and I work for Citrix and it doesn't work out, there's nobody else here. I'm like, yeah, there are. So to be able to attract talent and keep talent with all these other opportunities, that's a big, humongous thing. And then the relationship with the universities need to get better. And I think that piece wanes because the university staff can change. And so when you have companies that, like when Pete Martinez was at IBM, he used to go to FAU, go, I want your best and brightest every graduating class. And they did phenomenal things. So to me, that's one of the things that's changed. You can see how the communities really come together as a region in a lot of ways.
So you come from being in the know because you're a part of the happenings and all the companies coming. And so I grew up in South Florida when Broward County was about 800,000 people, and it was wonderful. There was no traffic, but we were known as, we were known as hospitality. So the way that I think about what's happening in our community is that we need to inspire the kids to understand that tech is where it's at, and we're here in South Florida, and to have the conversations around the dinner table about that people work at tech companies, and they come home and the conversation they have is about tech companies. And that's how kids learn and realize what the opportunities are. My first business was 1987. This is my first technology business, scaling technology business, but I had 8 other businesses. From product systems integration, manufacturing, and actually the business that Zendu is, we're empowering SMBs because I love small business owners, but I'm applying manufacturing principles through technology to eliminate repetitive tasks and gain time. So the Broward or our community of past was around hospitality and tourism, and this is what was spoken at schools and where kids, what they hear and what they talk about on the playgrounds. So for me, I think what we need to do is we need to make sure that the message gets down to the teenagers, even to the elementary school. So I love that, we're doing the same thing. We're going and harvesting from the colleges, like we're giving to the professors and everybody, give us your best, give us your best, and doing but we could do so much more if we just went to the elementary schools. If talks like this today start happening in the elementary schools, in the middle schools, and we offer up to do, an auditorium day or whatever, and tech companies and tech leaders come in, so kids identify and say, oh, I could do that, and that's, I think, part of the path to blowing it up. But the money's here now, everything's here now, so.
So my first interaction with tech in Florida probably happened during my days as a young banker in a traditional Wells Fargo, right? I think when I started looking in the market of where I could add value to my team, I said, well, let me find a few companies that I could bring into the portfolio. And I found a ton of tech companies really interesting. In my mind, I said, all right, I'm going to go where the traditional bankers aren't looking, right? And it's going to be in tech. But what I found was that traditional banks have no interest, appetite, or even depth of knowledge to kind of really support tech founders, right? And so I immediately realized that, I want to change my career. This is where I want to go. I want to be in the space of venture, in the world of creation, of disruption, right? And for me, since then, it's been like a development track of getting there. And so what I've noticed has changed recently is that I think before we had these kind of large brand platforms, and I'll just name companies like Chewy.com, right, which was a big company that put kind of Fort Lauderdale on the map. But you didn't have the high volume of smaller companies, small founders, kind of grinding away, hustling in an ecosystem, in a community together, right? Like you have today. And I think so COVID kind of brought some silver lining to South Florida. And I think it attracted this community of founders, which is very different than 2 years ago, even, I'd say. And so for me, being in this seat with Silicon Valley Bank, I think it's been just a dramatic learning experience where you're always catching up to what the market's doing. Every week it's 4 or 5 new VCs that are moving to Florida, and in the state in general, primarily South Florida. In the volume of tech startups that are coming here, or at least coming here to kind of feel out the market, talk to people, who's doing what, and kind of understanding, who are the VCs? Is there real capital? Are there real businesses being built here, or people just partying, right? Because everybody seems to think that that's all we do. And we do that well, I will say, but we also do create great companies, right? And so I think now it's serious for Florida, right? And particularly Fort Lauderdale, I think, has some peculiar characteristics to it, which we'll talk about later, but that are very different from the other cities, and I can kind of speak to my perspective on that.
Well, just getting back to the fundamentals, for us, it's really around people. And what makes, with Mayor Suarez, and while there's a big, halo around Miami, I get a sense that there's a lot of the work gets done, between here and Boca. And what's really nice about in the tech space, we pull from Miami, North Miami, Aventura, all the way from Boca up. So when you take a look at the kind of radius, we have a really great pool to pull from. What I'm really proud of is we actually connected with FAU, Dean Bartoloma, and we created a very unique program that actually started, we've got quite a few interns who work for us. I'm even more proud, a lot of female engineers, but also we just had 3 of them convert from intern to full. So what's exciting about that is created a program where interns get experience, full pay, and credit at the same time. So a very unique, I grew up at the University of Illinois. I was in the co-op engineering program, but you didn't get credit while you're doing your co-op. So this was a way to create a win-win-win for cultivating new talent. And the fact that the dean was open to creating a new kind of innovative program and working with small companies just says a lot about the ecosystem here.
Perfect. So let's go through and let's address it right here. What are the best things about being in Fort Lauderdale? I think we've talked and touched on a couple that have been great achievements, and I think we've started to get there. But if you have to sell someone, not that we do anymore, on being, there you go, right? So on being in Fort Lauderdale, how would you put it? What are the biggest pros of being here and being in this ecosystem? Whoever wants to start.
I think the best thing about Fort Lauderdale is living here, just the life that we can have in general. Because I think that's the most important thing about where you build a company or where you work, or it's about the fact that you can live a good life. And it's much more than just the weather. I think it's a whole mix of things about the city. It's the quality of just everything around us that you have social life, you have work, business, you have airports, you have tourism and people from all over the world, so you get a good variety of diversity. You've got capital that funds enterprise, right? And that's something that I think is always kind of a pivotal piece to any business ecosystem. And I think what's different about here is that, you look at Silicon Valley, it was founded by engineers that attracted capital to San Francisco. They were coming out of these great schools, think Hewlett-Packard, think all the silicon chip manufacturers. They attracted money to the valley, right? And I think what's different about South Florida is that the money's already kind of here. It's just been really invested in real estate, in traditional businesses. And I think South Florida is just discovering venture now, right? And so I think if we attract the talent to engineer here, to create here, to found here, It's just a perfect marriage of everything you can do. And I'm seeing it in our clients where, as of Monday, we opened up our borders, and there are a ton of founders coming from other countries that now they say, well, I don't have to go to New York or San Francisco to scale my business, to raise capital anymore. I don't have to live somewhere that's totally unnatural for me, weather, culture, and a whole bunch of other things. I can just move to South Florida and scale a company from series, 0 or angel to D rounds. I mean, Andrew Parker at Papa Health just raised the D round in Miami. He's born and raised unicorn, right? And you look at his story, his father's story, also founding businesses in a family, right? So I think those examples kind of highlight some of what we do. There are others also that we probably don't know about in the press, but believe me, they're happening. Miami will probably have 2 or 3, and I think Fort Lauderdale 2 or 3 unicorns in the next 6 to 12 months.
By the way, well, there may be 2 or 3 unicorns. I think Fort Lauderdale is probably sitting on a dozen unicorns. So
Unicorns, yeah.
unicorns. There's a lot more there than you think. It was really exciting for us, and this was really more opportunistic. We ended up, we looked at office space all over, from commercial and in different areas, and we ended up finding a sublease in the Bank of America building that was at a fraction of market, and granted, market has a new definition during COVID. And I can't tell you, in recruiting people, how they love working in this kind of environment, what La Solis represents. We even have people who take a boat, they take a water taxi to work and walk over. There's a whole different quality of life being there, walking down for lunch. And then all of a sudden it's so easy to come into Fort Lauderdale. Just during COVID, we've had 32 customers come and want to come in and visit. And obviously, as it becomes colder in the winter, we have even more people want to come and visit. And the access with Fort Lauderdale Airport and the whole area, and being able to walk down to a lobster bar for lunch, and people love it. And it's been a great recruiting asset.
No, go.
So first, I'd like to put some shine onto our mayor. Did an amazing job. And prior to the tech world and anything, your communication style, your communication skills, I think is phenomenal for our community and how you're forward thinking and staying ahead. And when you say water taxi for people to come to work, I think that South Florida and Fort Lauderdale offers a well-rounded community for people to raise families, for people to have fun here, for everything that you possibly could want. So I think that's the reason to be in Fort Lauderdale and in the South Florida area. We have 3 airports, easy to get in and out. We have, we're diverse. It's not strictly code tech businesses. It's every type of startup and every type of business in every sector, from marketplace to SaaS to tech-enabled SaaS to you name it, to Chewy. And I think that it's important to have that range of businesses. So I think it's a lot of little things, and I think that Fort Lauderdale's done a really great job of blocking and tackling what David does and what the mayor does. So we're fortunate to be here. Who wouldn't want to live here? Derek, are you living in Miami or Fort Lauderdale?
In between.
Good answer. I live north, and to everyone's point, we all have team members. Our furthest team member is Boynton, and our furthest south is Pinecrest in Miami. And they come to work every day, and that's what it's about when you're in this community. And to just tag on to Diane's, Adam Rogers from Ultimate Software started out as an intern. A lot of people don't know that. He started out as an engineering intern and became CEO of Ultimate Software. So all things are possible.
We just had a meeting with one of our clients with FTL, and half of their team took the training. And I'm like, you've got to just love it.
So I'll share 2 perspectives, and also add on to Lil for Mayor Trentella to be able to, Fort Lauderdale continues to work with us whenever we have projects. We don't have to have a concern about them going through when we're trying to attract companies. So kudos to you, Mayor, for continuing what Fort Lauderdale's been doing for so long. So thank you. So I'll give you two perspectives on what I think makes Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, unique and special. One is the diversity. So that's now like this big buzzword, and so many communities going through that. We've been doing this for decades, for a long time. Nikki Grossman, who ran the convention at Fort Lauderdale Convention and Visitor Bureau, specifically went after the LGBTQ community because why not? They have income. We're accepting. It doesn't matter who you love or who loves you. It doesn't matter what color you are, where you came from. This place has got everything. If you want to be in a Venezuelan community, out Weston. If you want to be in a German community, there's some in Hollywood. If you want to be in Brazilians, go up and pop in Deerfield. It doesn't matter. And I think part of that comes from the fact that this is it's a newer community. It's not if you go to some communities, if you didn't go to that country club, or your parents were a member of that country club, if you didn't belong to some other organization, then it was really hard, or it still is hard for you to get involved in that business community.
You have some of that too.
Yeah.
Diversity, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of everything.
Exactly. So that piece, I think that is, when we talk to companies, and it's not just tech companies, that piece is really important to them. They want to make sure that the workforce that they're attracting from everywhere is going to feel accepting and not overly one way or the other. And so I think that those two things really make Fort Lauderdale unique in a way and very accepting. And think about it. If you're moving a company here, the company is what? It's people, and they want to feel accepted and an easy transition. So I think those are two pieces that I really see that make us special.
Amazing. All right. Obvious next question. Where, in terms of Fort Lauderdale, are there maybe a tiny bit of weakness? Where can we improve? Is it just the people from California coming in?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll be gentle.
Here's the setup. No, is it just the people coming in from California ruining it, or are there things here inherently that we can get better at? And I'll use we because I'm just jumping in the boat right now. But in terms of just the community, where are the areas that you'd love to see improvement? You'd love to see us continue to build out in Fort Lauderdale.
All right, I'll jump in on that one. And so I think one of the ways that we can, so Fort Lauderdale is kind of a very low-key area, right? It's not and we work with companies, and some companies are like, I have got to be in Miami, and they're like, it's all about being seen, and that's wonderful, and that's right, and for them, it's great. But this is a much more laid-back community, and I think part of that comes with that is the fact, like, we don't want to brag. We don't want to hey, this is so great, you need to come, And if you're in Texas gets 10 weeks of drought, and they'll be like, hey, guess what? We have more drought than you do. And you're like, that's a bad thing, dude. Why are you bragging about that? And so I think that we have such wonderful things. We have world-class companies here. When I go out and I talk and I say, hey, where do you think the cell phone was invented? Or excuse me, the smartphone was invented? And they're like, Silicon Valley. I go, nah, it was here in Greater Fort Lauderdale. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. Where's the first IBM PC or first personal computer? In South Florida. We don't brag enough. We don't take that. It's not that we're not proud to be where we're from, but we need to kind of be, a little edgier and brag about what a great place this is, and not to be concerned about that. But I think that comes out, and it gets, that starts to buzz a little bit more, and everybody's like, when you travel, where are you from? I'm from Fort Lauderdale. Hey, okay, great. Well, I don't know where is it. It's just above Miami, whatever. Just to brag a little bit more about what a great environment we have. That's my thought. What do you, Lil?
Again, see, you come from the side of knowing, and then so the South Florida community comes from the side of that we don't. And so it's only gotten more challenging, right, with the way that technology has advanced communication. It used to be, well, hey, you could, email somebody or text somebody or call their house. Well, now it's WhatsApp and Slack and Telegram and on and on and on and on. And so I think what I would say is where we could do better is formulate a strategic, cohesive plan. Let's plant our flag. Let's say this is what we want. 5 years from now, this is what we want. And then how do we come together, inclusive, to drive towards that plan? And I think that if we could do that and break down the walls, which are starting to happen, right? Break down the walls and make it one community of all of the people of South Florida. And what do we want? What do we want for the children of South Florida? What do we want for the opportunity for people to work in South Florida? What do we want for the opportunity for people to own homes in South Florida? What do we want for the community, for transportation? And if we come together and do that, we are going to be freaking rock stars. And I think that's what could make a difference.
I would agree. I think that that's a massive effort, and it just takes a tremendous amount of time and effort. And I think that prosperity partnership of what what the Alliance and Joe Vaincheck at the Alliance is trying to do, 11 different pillars, the housing, the entrepreneurship, all those things. But to your point, we need more people to get involved, right?
Right. We need an inclusive conversation, and we need to have a, and I love Joe and what he's doing. It's amazing, what we have going on at the Innovation Center. And, we have one of the world's, Joey and I are part of one of the world's largest chapters of EO. It's, entrepreneurs organization, worldwide organization, and our chapter is in the top 5 in the world. And yet our community doesn't know about this organization where we help entrepreneurs become better by sharing what's here and what's here together. And same thing for YPO. Collectively, how do we get everybody at the table or the people that we need to for that particular initiative? And I think that would be remarkable.
On the VC side, all around SaaS and AI, while we're involved in that, we actually make things. We make light controls and products that monitor transformers, and we manufacture things. And I'm a big believer when you start taking a look at what's going on with just logistics and shipping costs, that we can actually start moving manufacturing back to the U.S. And I think we have opportunities to do that. I think Florida is a great place to do it. If you take a look from the Space Coast, down south, there's a great core competency. We'd like to see more of that here. We're actually seeing more of our prototyping and work that we do. It's interesting. Companies who come out of the yacht building are doing some of the CNC work and other stuff that we're doing, instead of farming it out, bringing it back here. So we would like to see, more of that happening. And then the other thing for us is we're hiring. We'd love to see more incentives for doing it. How do we build versus pushing things offshore, and can we create more incentives for kind of growing our kind of micro ecosystem?
Yeah, I think in my view, I'm kind of speaking from what I hear from my founders and VCs, investors. I think keeping this place a good place to reside and live, keeping Fort Lauderdale or South Florida in general a comfortable place to live is important. And right now, I'd say probably 2 big challenges that I hear a lot about are probably housing, cost of living has become a topic on everyone's mind. I think we are landlocked in a way. We face similar challenges as San Francisco and New York face, right? We've got the water on one side and the Everglades on the other. We can't move either, right? And so it's kind of, we have to be very smart about how we use land. And it cannot only serve private interests, right? And that's probably a conversation in and of itself. It's a tough thing to work around, but it is something we have to kind of work on. And I think the second thing that's most important to the people I work with, the founders, the tech companies I work with, it's what Ian talked about. It's people, it's access to qualified talent, and I think it goes beyond the college grads that are ready to work at like Microsoft or IBM. I think startups are looking for people that can develop software in the full breadth of engineering. Like they need to be full stack developers, and I think a lot of the universities here have tended to develop talent for the likes of Microsoft and IBM, but founders probably need more, and so it requires a bit of a pivot in the curriculums from universities to focus on deep tech or software development for startups that I think they're having to import it from other markets into Florida. Fortunately, there's a good demand. Like there's actually a good supply of talent coming to Florida, but I think a lot of the schools aren't yet focused on developing cybersecurity programs, software engineering for high growth startups, right? So that you don't have to hire them and fire them 12 months later. You can hire them and they're a full stack developer. They can run with you for 5 years, right? And I think schools in San Francisco do that very well, right, in the Bay Area. Boston is known for developing great talent. New York, everybody just goes there just because, so it finds great talent. So I think that's going to be a challenge for us. Right now, a lot of it's coming from LATAM. Probably 60% of my tech companies have outsourced software engineering in somewhere in Latin America, Russia, Belarus, Eastern Europe. I mean, there's great engineering talent from those places, and I think there's opportunity to attract more here or develop it in-house. And to Liz's point, I think that probably starts at the elementary school level. And I've seen some programs come up, so won't mention any by name, but there are a few. So I think we have to continue supporting those organizations that are producing the young talent, right? So those are two things, yeah, housing and talent, and that's it, I think.
We're Estonia for our
Estonia,
destiny.
there you go, yeah.
We went to Estonia, which is the Silicon Valley of Europe, right?
All right, so we've talked about where you started in Fort Lauderdale. We've talked about the pros. We've identified some areas that we might be able to improve on. We even talked about some solutions. But now let's get to the action part. What are you doing day to day to keep Fort Lauderdale a great place to be? Develop the ecosystem out. I think Lily put together some great points. What's your detailed plan to implement each one of those points? Just kidding.
I'm scaling a business,
That's
but
right.
when I'm done, I'm happy to come
Walk me through
and
your
work with the mayor.
solution to the real estate issue. No, in terms of just what do you do on the day-to-day to keep this place as great as it is?
So what you do on the day-to-day is you inspire your team to be better than they think that they are by themselves, by being part of a culture in a company that drives forward and that is part of a community. So I think it's very important that it's a responsibility for all business owners, not only startups and founders, but that everybody out here who has a business, to develop your team to help build the community and not just get from the community. So that's getting involved and being active. And grow your business. Grow your business in a smart, thoughtful way is, I think, the main thing that we can contribute as founders, right? You know, when we won Emerge 2018, we were very fortunate to win Emerge 2018. And when we were accepted, you know, out of 500 applications to be one of the 100 companies to be in the startup showcase, not even knowing if we were going to get to the stage or to the first stage, let alone the second stage. And what I was told is, you're a female, you're not going to win. Don't even think about it. You're a female, you're old, and you're from Broward. And,
Don't tell Lil that.
exactly. I'm like, are you
Don't tell this
freaking
woman
kidding me?
that.
So, you know, that was the lens of it. And then so it ended up being a Broward County company that won Emerge Americas, and it's a Broward County company, Mayor, that won Rise of the Rest Miami. And so, because we are one community, South Florida, and so I think that we all have the responsibility to be aware to make it better in every way we can, right?
You know, I kind of look at a bit of a three-pronged strategy for us. I mentioned the intern program. We're looking to put time, resources, money against that. We think cultivating more people, getting more people, more, you know, students into those programs and getting them through kind of coming from a co-op world into that internship program is really important. So, in fact, we've got our COO who actually is from Northeastern. I'm from University of Illinois. We're actually looking at multiple programs in our kind of alma maters to really drive this because you can't find enough. The other thing is, like FAU has a phenomenal RF chamber, and we're doing some interesting stuff around 5G, antenna design, products, and we're actually working on some programs to do joint development. So how we can help build those internal programs by leveraging their master's students and their resources and doing this together to help build what we're doing, I think is another great one. And then, you know, the environment here, I've seen this organically internally. You know, we've now got golf programs at Top Golf. We've got tennis. You know, everybody now is starting to create kind of internal programs to create more of a community in the company. And it's all of these things are playing off of each other, which is really nice.
We need pickleball. Pickleball.
We have pickleball.
No, there's not enough courts.
Because no one else has pickleball, so they'll come to Fort Lauderdale.
We need pickleball.
I want to shout out NSU. They've got an interesting innovation campus there that recently launched. I think you all should guide them. If you have an interest in tech, go hang out there for a day. And then they've put a lot of capital into the cybersecurity kind of platform there, which is very interesting for developing talent. So things like that are great examples of what differentiates Broward County in general, Greater Fort Lauderdale, right? But I think what we do to help the ecosystem is, personally, I live in Broward County, and I make sure everybody knows that, because I don't think there's any reason to hide it, right? And I don't think that people understand that there's a world outside of Miami, and they don't. Sometimes I think the newcomers don't understand that we're really like a tri-county connection, and we live off of each other in ways. We support each other, right? The capital's here, the young talent's there, but they support each other via 95 or whatever, right? We're always driving up and down. We're always driving up and down for meetings and events and interactions. So I think to that's my personal kind of thing about being here, is that I like living in Broward, and I've lived in Dade County too, and I enjoyed that phase of my life, but in this phase, I like Broward. And I find that a lot of my founders also kind of, as they're scaling their companies, they find that, hey, 0 to 30 employees, maybe a very dense core place is great for raising capital, for attracting certain type of talent. But maybe as you're scaling company employee 50, 100, 300, you want to be somewhere where your workforce has affordable housing, has access to more school options, things like that. I think people forget. And there are some markets that, we could find ourselves in a situation in Miami, and I have founders that are complaining about this now, where it's just as expensive as New York or San Francisco, so why not just go to San Francisco, right? And so at some point you have to start thinking outside of that core and say, hey, where else can we develop the area to actually scale businesses beyond early stage? And so there's some of that. What we do as a bank, we deploy a lot of capital for community organizations. PPP, all of our fee income was donated. We made no profit from PPP in anything we did there. We currently have 2 direct investment. We have 2 funds that are about $400, $500 million, where we invest in diverse emerging venture capital managers. So these are emerging VCs that have never had a fund, and they represent kind of diverse backgrounds. So we deploy our money into those funds. We do a lot of events. I mean, a lot more than any bank I've ever seen. We do a lot of community activities. We sponsor a lot of things. I think Endeavor, we've been working with you guys for 20 plus years in LATAM, right? And probably have hundreds of startups that have come out of Endeavor and LATAM and scaled. And so there's a history there. The people from our board sit on Endeavor's board. Like it's a true partnership that we have. And what I've seen from the bank is we opened an office in Brickell, because that's where we had the kind of a legacy. We acquired a private bank this year, and they had an office there. So by way of acquisition, we inherited people. So we also brought in what we call our early stage team. That allows me to focus more on my kind of area, which is more growth stage startups. And so we've made some investments there. We've also donated a lot to the Emerge. We're sponsors of Emerge next year. I think one of the lead sponsors there. And we also sponsor organizations in different areas. Venture Atlanta, we're big sponsors. Florida Venture Forum, we sponsor a lot. So there's just, in general, a lot of things we do. In terms of product, which I think is what tech companies are most interested in, this is the only bank I've ever seen that gives so much product away at the early stage. So when I'm onboarding startups and they say, hey, well, I'm with this big bank, and I say, well, what are you paying in fees monthly for your accounts? And they're like, well, I pay $200, $500. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to get you that for free for 3 years. Everything you have. International wires because all my founders have dev teams in some foreign country, right? International, incoming, outgoing, free. ACH, free. I mean, we do all that, right? Foreign exchange, our cost is probably a third of what our competitors are charging. Credit card programs, all free, no foreign transaction accounts, none of that. My credit card programs are unsecured, so if your startup fails, you don't go down with the startup, right? You're personally not affected by that. And these are large credit card programs. I mean, I've got $1 million credit card programs that are unsecured to a startup that is pre-profit, asset light, so I've got no collateral to cover this credit exposure, right? And so these are things that I have actively in my portfolio today. And then in terms of the structure of our lending, like we lend at the venture stage, right? So there's a lot of venture risk. None of my startups have assets. They don't own buildings, they don't own real estate. They have IP, they have great people. That, I think, is their intangible asset. And we essentially lend them this capital after they raise an A round, right? We take a senior lien on everything like any bank does. We're required to by our regulators. But what's most interesting is that we don't charge 15% interest rates for these types of loans, right? I'm pricing loans now at 4.5%, 5% annual. And so if you think about that, it's like, you know, how do you make it work, right? And we have some warrants, so we take equity in the businesses that we lend to. And essentially, we're in it for the long haul. I will not hit my return on investment requirement if the company does not stay at scale and succeed. Fortunately, out of 10, I get 1 or 2 that'll IPO, and they'll cover the losses of those that didn't succeed, right? But it's a pay it forward business model. So we put our P&L there and we say, hey, we want you to get to Series D, become a unicorn. That's where I'm going to probably become.
Why you call it venture debt?
There you go.
So-
Hey, I know Lil's got a 745 hard stop. Do
Yeah.
you mind if I just
Yeah,
bring
no, go
in?
for it, go
Is that
for it.
right? So you asked what we're all doing, and I'll make this real quick. You mentioned about NSU Innovation Center. So on November 29th, we're doing a launch of the Greater Fort Lauderdale State of Tech Report presented by South Florida Tech Gateway. It's an open invitation. We expect to have at least a couple hundred folks there. You'll be able to download the whole piece because just now you look at the map, that's impactful. The State of Tech Report is going to give you all the metrics, driven data. Lil's in it. You got great stories in it. So that's it.
Perfect.
The Innovation
Thank
Center.
you.
Go visit the Innovation Center.
Yes, that's the innovation.
So, as David had mentioned, Lil has to take off at 7:45, but we have the mayor coming up shortly thereafter, and Lil, I know you have to take off, so when you need to take off, take off. Do we have any questions? 1 or 2 questions for any of the panelists, for anyone here? We've all made, sir?
So, Luis, are you crypto friendly, your bank?
Yeah, so right now we have a committee that's working on it, but we're limited to what the regulators allow us to do. The regulators have not been very open to accepting crypto in the banking.
You took warrants from Coinbase, right? So how do you do that?
Yeah. So we are friendly to platforms or technology in blockchain or crypto space, but we cannot hold crypto as a federally regulated institution. So anything that has crypto dollars flowing through our accounts is prohibited right now.
I mean, because
But we can support technology.
all right, yeah, that's my question because even we can't find banks here leading you back, but if you do, it's great.
Yeah, so it's been very limited. I get a lot of it. Believe me, this is something that's special about South Florida. We're becoming a crypto blockchain kind of hub. But you just can't move crypto dollars through any federally regulated bank right now. But I will tell you that I get this request quite a bit, and we talk about it a lot at the executive level. But we're kind of waiting for the regulator to say, hey, you can do this much, and we'll go a step further.
Anyone else? Sir?
There was talk about building like partnerships with the community, with universities. Do you guys have any ideas as far as building those different partnerships or getting those universities more involved in our institute here in Fort Lauderdale?
You have to go out and do it. So, the universities are still thinking old school, like for founders out there that want to disrupt an industry, disrupt education. We need to think about it differently, right? So you have to go out. They are, like Nova's program with the Innovation Center, and that's public-private, that's Broward County and NSU. Just go out and get involved. FAU, FIU, they're doing it. It's just not coming from the top of the college or the university.
You also have Broward College entrepreneurial experience, 2 blocks over that way. You've got FAU Research Park and as well as Tech Runway. They're all 3, we've got the deans of FIU, NSU, and FAU all serve on the steering committee for Tech Gateway. And they hear that. They hear what the companies are saying. They're really trying, but it's, a continual effort.
They have to move their ship. Like, they're trying within their organization to get their, legacy organization to understand what's happening in the world.
But if you want to connect real quick, check out the NSU Innovation Center. Go out there. Check out the Broward College experience, entrepreneurial experience. Go up to Tech Runway. Go, FIU's got the same thing. They've got acceleration, all that type of stuff. That'd be the best way to connect real quick.
I think the market's probably not moving as well. The education system is probably not moving. The institutions aren't moving as fast as the market is. So there's lag, right? I think what could happen is that universities from other ecosystems will see that there's an opportunity in Miami, and they'll just establish programs here. You could see like a Stanford. I'd love to see a Stanford set something up here locally, and other schools, right? But locally, there's also some partnership between ecosystem players that are investing in educational programs. So SoftBank did something called the Operator School, which they're in the middle of right now. It's a great, very interesting platform. You should look it up. But essentially every week they have founders come in and talk to college students, 200, 300, 400 of them, and walk through different phases of their experience. So that stuff like that's very interesting. I think and FIU have something else. NSU is ramping something up also.
By the way, there's a, if you look at Case Western out of Cleveland, they have something called the Maker Center. It's an amazing 7-story building that you can take a concept, and it's done through corporate sponsorship. You can take a concept from ideation all the way through PCB design, 3D printing, CNC, all the way through, prototyping and piloting the product. And it's a 7-story building, fascinating. It'd be great to see how something like that comes.
So it sounds a little like a Capital Factory in Austin, where you start
very
at the
similar.
first floor and then you progress up.
I think Fort Lauderdale's ready.
I agree. I'd love to have it downtown. All right.